Greetings. Today we're looking at a sort of a mundane project. One of the biggest questions we get in training is how to do budget and a budget upload. Well, Jan has prepared a tremendous video on uploading the budget, and what I'm going to do with this set of videos is, actually I'm not sure how many videos it will take, maybe just one. I'm going to show you how to prepare the budget for the upload. The concept is actually very simple, and once you hear about it, which I'm just about to explain, once you hear about it, you'll say, oh yeah, I can do that without much help. In SunPlus, we have 10 ledgers. A ledger is a pot of information, and the cool thing about a ledger is that each of the 10 ledgers all have the exact same chart of accounts and all the same analysis dimensions and analysis codes. So they're parallel worlds, exactly the same. So a business unit has a whole different chart of accounts, whole different setup, but a ledger has the same setup in each of the 10 places. And we use the A ledger to do the actual transactions, and it's handy that A and actual start the same, at least in English. Okay, so we use the A ledger for actual historical transactions. When something happens, we record it in ledger entry into the A ledger, and is there for report writing with Q&A and so forth. Well, with budget, it's exactly the same, but it's in the B ledger. So we make entries in the B ledger, and it's all about budget or forward-looking information. So if so what we think's going to happen is recorded in the B ledger. Well, so you can change ledger. If you have the right menu on your screen, there's a change your ledger a menu, and then you've got ledger entry will post, instead of into a different business unit, it posts into a different ledger. And so you could conceivably sit there and record your whole budget in ledger entry, change your ledger to the B ledger and sit there and record your whole budget into the B ledger. Well, but most people would find that tedious. So just like in the A ledger, where you can do an upload or an import of bulk information in one big transaction, we're doing an import into the B ledger, so we don't have to sit there and do all the typing. But the main point is that it's exactly the same. Okay, the concepts and the process of importing is exactly the same. And so instead of importing into A for actual data, we're importing into B. Instead of in actual data debiting salaries and crediting cash, we're doing that sort of thing in the B ledger for things that we think is going to happen. So the B in accounting for budgets is so similar to the A, to what you already know, that it's sort of funny sometimes that people have trouble with doing budget, because it is exactly the same except for it's in B instead of A. Instead of writing entries into A, we write them into B. Instead of importing lots of transactions into A, we import lots of transactions into B. Instead of debiting and crediting debiting expenses for actual transactions, we debit the exact same expenses for prospective or planned on transactions. So it's exactly parallel world, but in the B ledger. And so what we're going to look at today is importing a budget, and now preparing the budget. Now, if you think about it, if you have a balanced budget, it's the concepts of debits and credits are very simple, because all of your expenses need to be debited and all of your revenue needs to be credited, and the entry will balance. If it doesn't balance, we've got to find some account up in the liabilities section to take the difference. But since we're not really using budget information out of the asset and liability accounts, we really don't care. Now, one day, some really bright person in the SunPlus world will start budgeting balance sheet accounts as well. So it becomes more complicated, but the mechanical ability to record your budget is still there. I mean, the mechanical ability to record a very elaborate budget, which includes budgeting your balance sheet accounts, which is sort of like budgeting, 203 instead of 102 or 101, Instead of budgeting your balance sheet accounts, we don't bother with it right now. And so we just need to lose any difference between our assets and liabilities up into that liability account just to get it away. So in general, we for a balanced budget, we'll debit the expenses and credit the revenue, and they'll balance. If we don't have a balanced budget, we'll take the difference and stick it up in some liability account to make a balanced entry. Okay, and all of the rules of recording revenue and expense still exist over in the B ledger. So the rule that says we need to have the budget by fund, function, restriction, resource, and who. Excuse me, I might have said that wrong. The rule that says that we need to record income and expense and code it by fund, function, restriction, and resource, and maybe by who. All of those rules are still in place in the B ledger. Okay, so we want to keep that in mind. It's exactly the same, just parallel. So watch this example. We're appreciative of this organization of letting us use their budget information as our foundation, our example. And now I need to mention that the video will be a little bit slow because I'm actually going to do the work. Okay, I'm not going to shortcut it or anything, so you can sort of get the idea of what I'm doing and fast forward a little bit. If you do fast forward, there's sort of a tricky part at the end that you want to make sure that you watch, and so fast forward in the middle when you get the idea of what I'm doing, and then watch the ending part, and that'll be good. All right, so thanks a lot, and let's get going. Okay, let's get started. We're very thankful to Highland View Academy, which could be considered alpha dog of the SunPlus world. They have been generous to allow us to work with their information on their budget, and they are considered alpha dog because they were the first organization to go on SunPlus. Consider the bravery behind that. So we're working with their budget, and we're going to convert it into an import template. And so what we're doing is that we are going to convert the budget figures to transactions. That is, we're using the same logic as we do when we're recording actual transactions that happen. For example, here we have worthy student donations of $90,000. When that money comes in, they will debit cash and credit worthy student donations. So we want to credit the budget for $90,000, just like we're going to do when the actual transaction occurs. And so if we think about that a little bit, we are going to credit the revenue and debit the expenses, and our entry will be, if we had an absolute balanced budget, then the debits and the credits would equal each other. But we're fortunate in this example that they are budgeting a surplus of, let's go back to this sheet here, they're budgeting a surplus of $419.93. Okay, let's get this zoomed a little bit so you could see it better. Okay, so let's see. So they've got revenue of $2,423,210, expenses of $2,842,203, and they're budgeting a deficit of $419,093. Now, it's perfectly okay to budget a deficit if you've got the net assets that can handle it. You don't want to have the idea that you must always have a balanced budget, because if you have surpluses in the past, then you can use those surpluses in the future, and that's what is done by budgeting a deficit. So nothing at all wrong if you can afford a deficit budget, nothing at all wrong with budgeting that. Okay, so for each of these revenue items, for example, in our instructional revenue, okay, I don't know whether going to every one of them and increasing the size is going to be sort of painful, but we'll do a few. For instructional revenue, we're going to credit this account by 411,132, and we'll credit this account by 42,423, and credit this revenue account by 1179,225, credit this account by 2,000, credit this account by 14,000, debit salaries for 368,616, and so whenever we record an entry to an account, we will do it with the same rules. Now, I didn't mention to you that we're doing this in ledger B, the B ledger, so we record actual transactions in the A ledger, and we're recording prospective or future transactions in the B ledger. So that's a very important principle that I sort of skipped over, is that everything that we do with budget is exactly the same as we do in regular accounting as far as debits and credits are concerned, but we do it in the B ledger. So in the B ledger, just like in the A ledger, we have to give the account number, the account name, fund, function, restriction, who, amount. And if we are working in Sun Plus 6, we have to do a fund, function, restriction, resource, who, and amount. Okay. And who, you know, of course, is only a requirement in the 81s. The account number is 81. So we need to record this account, you see. So you could imagine we've got to take this. Let's copy this over here, and we go Command Copy. This is to teach you. We're going to do it a little more efficiently this in a minute. All right, so the number is that, okay, and then this is the amount, and so let me copy that. Excuse me here, I'm stumbling around. Okay, and it's an amount. All right, and we need to put in a fund. Well, that's fund 10, and we need to put in a function, and that's right here on this sheet. And this is function 122, and their numbering system. It may look a little bit different than what you're using in yours, but that's a function code. And the restriction would be whatever the restriction needs to be, and who, if it's a 81 account, the who. Okay, you get the idea? And that's all there is to doing this. The rest of what you see is just the mechanics of me working through all the work. But that's what we're basically doing. We're taking every one of these line items and putting them in here as debits and credits. And I should have mentioned that this is a revenue account, and so it needs to be a negative figure, because we're going to do negative figures for our credits. Okay, and that way we'll put negative figures for our credits and debits and positive figures. And if it's a balanced budget, the credits, the negatives, and the positive balance each other out. And if it's a surplus, then we've got to deal with that surplus and put it someplace. But we'll cover that when we get there. So now what we need to do is, let me just show it to you in a massive way, and we'll do it in a more efficient way than copying every one of those over there. So let's take that one out, clear the contents, and let's work on this a little bit. So we're getting this ready over here to cut and paste en masse over here. So we don't need to see the second sheet for a few minutes. Let's look over at this. Now the very first thing I'm going to do, so I don't mess up, is I'm going to do a save as. Okay, and so we'll save this as temporary. I'm going to do a lot of cutting and pasting, and I want to save it not only because I don't want to mess up the thing coming from Highland View, but it's very likely that I will mess it up and have to start all over again. And if I've saved it, then I have something to work with. Now, I've gone through every one of my sheets, and I know that every one of my sheets have the business I'm interested in column D. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete and clear the contents of E, G, and H, all the rest of these, so it will be easier for you to follow what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to go down here and right click on this tab, and I'm going to select all the sheets. Okay, now you got to be very careful when all these sheets are now lit up, because anything you do on one page appears on all of them. So I'll take this right here, E, F, G, and H, and I'll go clear the contents. Okay. Uh-oh, it's objecting to this. Alright, let's just do this again. E, F, G, and we'll right click, and we will come up here to home, and we will remove unmerge all the cells that were related in that. Go here, E, F, G, and home, because it wouldn't let me delete a merged cell. So now I'm going to clear the content, and now they're done. Alright, so I'm very careful now. I will unclick just one, and so every page now has gotten rid of that comparative data that we don't need. Pretty handy trick if you're just very careful. And we can try, I don't know if it'll work, but if I go right click, select all sheets, let's see what happens if I blow them all up to 150. Okay, and then we just get one, and they're all at 150 now. Pretty slick trick. Alright, now the next thing we have to do is that we need to make sure that when we move our row, that we don't lose track of the function that went with it. So I'm going to take this function here. I'm on the first page, instructional, and I'm going to take 122. Okay, and I'll take that baby and I'll copy it and run it all the way down. Okay, we don't have to be overly neat here. Okay, so I know that all of those go into function 122. Alright, and then I will do that through all the rest. Okay, this is 1299. Okay, maintenance is 1296. This is 1292. Okay, this seems like this is going to take forever, but we'll be okay. Patience, patience, patience. And so now we're ready to roll here. Alright, now the next step is sort of hard to describe why, but it is very important. We are going to cut and paste these things en masse from this spreadsheet over to this spreadsheet. Okay, alright, and I didn't realize it was going to do that. There we go. We're going to cut and paste these en masse. Now, like all spreadsheets made, you know, for budget, there's all kinds of links in here. See, like right here, that's a link, and that's a link, and that cell right there is a link. Well, no, that's a link. So if we at this point cut and paste from this spreadsheet to the other spreadsheet, that link gets broken and these numbers get messed up. So and it's every time I've done a budget import, I stumble on this one little problem, because I don't think about it, I'm just busy cutting and pasting, and it just ends up with a mess and I end up having to do it twice. So what we're going to do is go to every page and take the cells, the whole budget business here, Okay, and we're going to start all the way at the beginning where the summary is. All right, we'll take this and we will just right click, copy, and right in the exact same place, paste, special, values. So we don't have this problem happening, you see. So right here, all right, so as I pointed out earlier, that right there is a link in cell D6, and so we don't know where the links may be. If you knew where they all were, you could go just do those, but we don't know where, so we'll just do all of them just to cover, make sure we cover all the bases. We copy that, and we are now going to paste special and values, and we go okay. And now salaries is not a link anymore. Okay, administration, just go through, I'm going to go through all of them. I'll put the video on pause now. I'll go through all of them and convert them all to real values, to getting rid of all the links. So we go right click here, paste special, okay, I've got them all done where I've been very careful to cut and paste special, so to convert any links to real hard numbers that can be cut and paste without messing everything up. Then the next step is that we're going to go through with all of our revenue accounts. We're going to go through all of these different functions, pages again, and convert our revenue to negative figures. Now right here you could see a good example. The total net income here is $1,655,19, and you see it's added up. So these are revenue, conference subsidy, tuition income, and all is added. Okay, and then we have these discounts. So we are going to import this, and so this will need to be, since it's going to be credit, it needs to have a negative number. Okay, and just keep watching a second. I know you understand it, but just keep watching. Okay, and this one is a negative. Well, this next one is a discount. Okay, and it is going to be a debit. Okay, you discount on the revenue, you debit. Okay, and so we need to get rid of those negative signs because they are going to be debits. And now we're back to revenue and credits. Okay, and credits and credits, credit, one more, and keep watching. I'm about done with this one example. I'm not going to make you watch all of them. Okay, all right, so now my revenue was $655,911. Remember, this is a hard number because I've cut and pasted special, so it got converted to a hard number. So it is not the real addition of these, it's just the number that was left over when I started working on this column. But now if I highlight all of these, you see, you can look right down here and see 16, sorry, this is right down here at the bottom. You can see 1,655,911 in brackets, and that's exactly my revenue. So I did that one correctly. Okay, so just watch this one. All right, and so I'll make this negative. Okay, negative. I'm just going to do 2, and I'll do the rest without you having to watch. Let's watch 2 of them. Okay. Okay, and so my revenue is $24,600. Let's see if I still have that. $24,600. I'll look down here at the bottom. I still got revenue $24,600. So I did it correctly. All right, so I'll put this on pause, and I'll do the rest of them and come back as soon as I'm done. Okay, we're coming to the end of that one. I've done all the tabs. Whoops. There we go. There. All right, so now we're ready to get busy and doing cutting and pasting. And so we'll come back to collapsing this so you could see both screens again. Alright, let's see if we can do this. Pull this so you can see them both. And we're ready to go. A little bit of the fund amount. There's the amount right there. I think you can see what that is. All right, and so we want to do, we're going to work through each one of the tabs. Okay, work through each one of the tabs and bring it over and copy and paste into this thing here. Okay, and we're not worrying that we're copying and pasting this. It's very easy to delete en masse. So we're just taking everything. This is 125. We just take the whole business, and I suppose that we don't need to take any more than that. Okay, but we're not worried about copying that. It'll be easy to eliminate all of them. So I do command copy, control copy, then I'll come right over here and I will paste. Now right now we have this in the wrong column, and you know, it might be better if, it would have been better if I do that, but I'm just going to move them over to the amount column later as a group, and so I'm not worried about it. It's over there. All right. Now what might be helpful is, I guess I will not do this in mass. Let's just do it like this so you can see it easily. Delete this. All right, and this row right here doesn't have any amount, so we don't need it in our entry either. Okay, so we'll delete that, and then I will take this and I will highlight this, and I see that my column, let's do a little bit wider here. I wanted to see that button right there. So this is 143,500 is the net income or loss of, I think in this case it's a loss in this instructional. I'm sorry, I just did 125, so that would be the last one. Sorry. Right there. Okay, so this is that instructional. I didn't quite do it in the right order, but still you can see 143,500 and the financial aid function. So this loss that they have here, deficit should be a better word than loss. Deficit, they're debiting all of these expenses, and they're crediting all of this. And these are the two revenues from their worthy student money contributed, and so that's 143,500. It balances, so we've got that tab done correctly. And so what I'll do is I will add a yellow tab there to keep track that I've done it. Did it out of order, a little careless on my part, but you know, trying to talk and at the same time I do the work, you know. All right, so let's do this one. Okay, so we'll come here and we've got all of that. Okay, highlighting this, command copy, move my tab color out of the way. So I copied and I come right down here and I go paste like Bob. Oops, did that one wrong. All right, good that you can see my mistake. So let's try it again. Let me try my copying again. Copy, I've got to get that function. Okay. Copy, come over here. All right, and here we have two more accounts that don't have a any amount, so we can delete those without any problem. Come down here and delete this. And we will add them all up. And it equals the total of that one I carried over 122 is 744,769. So we'll come over here and look at the bottom, 744, 697. I think I didn't. 744, 697 is both the same, both places. Read it wrong a minute ago, and we're good to go. So now we come over here to administration. Trying to keep this on one screen so you guys can see both screens at the same time is killing me. All right, let's try it. All right, so here we got this, and then we go like this, and we go all the way down. Map didn't do it. Let me try it again. All the way down. And when I did my copying, my deal here, 1299 is that function right there. We need to do it very carefully over there. And so let's see if we got it. And I add these up. And they equal 448,663, 448,663. And we're in the money. So I'm not going to make you watch me do all the rest, but I will now go ahead and put it on pause and do the rest of them. Okay, I've done all of them now, each one of the different departments. And now, just sort of to test my work, I'm going to run a total of all of this column. Now, before we get too far along, we want to keep our wits about us, because this total has the totals for each department. See, it has this department here, so it has the details and it has the total. So when I sum the entire total, I get 583, and so that is twice the true balance, because it has the totals of each of the departments in there as well. So here is the total of all the information, the details, 291,675.80, and then I'm back on my main budget sheet, which on the first tab, and you see they are budgeting a deficit of 291,676. Okay, so I have properly carried everything over. I haven't dropped any of the items. So each of my debits and credits will net to be 291,675. So now we have all the information content of the budget sheet has made it over here. So to keep life simple, I'm going to reduce this thing out of the way so you don't, and we'll just look at just this. Okay. And so first thing I will do is I need to get rid of all these subtotals, okay, because the subtotals were just there to prove that each of the departments were brought in properly. So let me just go through and delete that. I'm going to show you what has to be done next. Okay, and you can see now our total, since we took the subtotals out, our total is now the total for the deal. Okay, for the whole matches the number over from the main thing. And so now let's take this and do data, sort, and we're going to sort by account number, column A. We'll go OK. You see, so we have all of our account numbers here. Now here we can clean this up a little bit. We don't have any amounts going in there, so we don't need to try to import that one. I could probably have done this more efficiently by sorting and taking care of it, but let's just do this. You can see how this thing is turning into something that looks more like a journal entry now. A normal. And we're just about done. So if you're getting impatient, mom's calling you or something. Okay, and I have 3 accounts down here that do not have an account number. Okay, and so I'm going to fake it for the purposes of this video and put in a number that looks like I've gone and looked up the account number and put it in. Okay. And so when you're really doing, of course, you've got to look it up. Now, if you're worried that these account numbers look different than your account numbers, remember these guys over here implemented long before the accounting manual. So we'll be having to get them up to speed. Okay, so we're ready to make our entries that way, and we just make sure everything's nice and clean down here. Those totals are still there. Notice that my total is still working, and we'll but I think I'm going to delete it, everything. Okay, and it's looking pretty good. And so now let's get this thing cleaned up a little bit. A little bit of cleaning going on, and let's add the entire total. Re-add it. Okay, and we still add the same number. Now, one of the things we have to be very careful about is that we don't try to import decimal too small a number. So let's see what we've got here. All right, so you can see down here that these numbers add up to something that initially looks a little bit crazy. 79, 79, 64, 53, 75, 10. And the reason for that is that when he's allocating expenses over the different departments, say retirement expense, he did it with formulas, and the formulas have produced numbers that are sort of crazy like. Okay, perfectly okay in a budget sheet, but not okay as far as debiting and crediting. We don't want to debit and credit less than a full penny. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll come over here somewhere. Let's just do it right here, and we go equal, and we get this number right there. Excuse me. We'll do at round. Okay, and we're going to round this thing, and we're going to round this number to 2 decimal places. Okay, all right, and we'll just take this and we'll copy it all the way down. Okay, and then let's just test to see if it's worked right. We'll add it up. All right, so now I'm taking all of these. Remember, these are the formulas that have the round formula, the round Excel function. Remember, you can't import a formula. So we'll copy that. That's true all the time. Then we'll go over here to amount, and we'll do pay special. Okay, values. And we've now pasted in the amount column. Okay, and we don't really need this anymore. Okay, so I'm going to highlight all of that and clear those contents, and we'll take this column right here and expand the number of decimals that are showing. Okay, let's take this column and add it up. So these are all solid numbers now, they're not a formula. And we'll add it up. And you see it's rounded perfectly. Alright, so now we don't need this column anymore of amounts. Alright, because we've gotten it over here to the right column, clear the contents, and we can get this back down to earth here without all those zeros. And let's just reduce the number of decimal places there. And we're good to go with that. So these accounts, okay, these accounts into these functions for those amounts, they're ready to import. And so here we have Fund 10, okay, and we definitely don't need that many decimal places, so we can get this thing down to Fund 10. We'll copy that all the way down. Alright, and we put the right restriction we want. Okay, I'm just going to put it in 31 to sort of show it to us. Again, we got too many decimals there showing. Might have gotten a little carried away on all the decimals I was fiddling around with. Copy that all the way down, and then we'll talk about who. Alright, now if we're doing this right, we'll come down to the 81s now. Okay, if we're let's lock these labels here so we don't have to worry about this anymore. Tools, data, window, and then let's freeze the pane, and now we have these things locked. Okay, so we can work with them a little easier. So down here in 81s, these are the salaries for each of the different functions, okay? For function 122, 1299, 1296, 1292, 4221. All right. So now, if I wanted to import, and I think it's very important to develop the skill to import the who, I would go over to Q&A and do a little report for this expense account and for this function, and get my last year's who and come up with what is the amount in the budget. Okay, so we have these amounts that are going in right over here for salaries. Well, who do they belong to? And what you would do is then you would insert a copy of this row for every employee in that function and break this number down into the who that it should be. Okay, let me say it again so you can make some sense out of it. Let's say that this function 122 had 10 employee slots. Well, I would take this row here and insert 10 rows exactly like this one, and then break the total for this function down into the who, into each of the 10 who's that should be getting that amount of the budget. Okay, all right, you could do that for all of the 81s, and that is extremely powerful then, because then you can write reports that compare the budgets by who and track the budgets by who. Okay, it's so important. I want to reiterate. Okay, so to do the who budget is very simple. Is you just simply insert copies of this row for every employee and then break the number down by each of the different who's. Okay, now so this thing is about ready to import. Okay, I paused the video there for just a second so I could get a little preparation for the next part. We have now every line of our budget is represented as a transaction where we're posting the fund, function, restriction, and who. Forgive me if I've sort of rewound a little bit to get it started and get us going here. And so now we're making a journal entry. So we need to post the total, the surplus of the deficit, someplace. Now, philosophically, this is extremely powerful, and we're stopping right now at the edge of a brink of an incredible amount of power, because we could flush this out with debiting and crediting the balance sheets accounts that we project to be using. For example, if the tuition is being collected into receivables, we could debit the receivable and then record an entry, a hypothetical entry for the future of the collection of the percentage of collections on those receivables and so forth. That would lead us to being able to make a budgeted balance sheet and a budgeted cash flow statement. But nobody I know in the Adventist Church is going to the point where they're trying to come up with budgeted balance sheets and budgeted income statements. But this is where the stopping point is to go that direction, because all you would have to do is add transactions down here in the bottom that represents the balance sheet activities that are planned for the next year: capital purchases, collections of cash, and so forth. But we're stopping right here, and what we will do is stuff that total into some balance sheet account. Okay, so we'll grab some liability account, and since we're not budgeting a balance sheet, we'll just stick it into find some nice little liability. It makes no difference what liability we use. Theoretically, we would be posting it to net assets. If you wanted a theoretically pure place to post it, would be to your fund balance account. But we have that fund balance account so locked up and closed down with business rules that it's just not worth opening the business rules for this one entry. So we'll find us a nice tidy liability account to post this to, and it requires a fund, but it doesn't require a function or a restriction. And now we have an entry that goes all the way. Let's just demonstrate this, and that's not going to be quite right, so I've just now realized it's not going to be quite right. But let's go ahead and add it up anyway and get the wrong answer. Okay, you see what I mean? Okay, so when we add this, we need to get a 0. We're not going to have a 0. I can just tell you that right now, because that figure right there, that sum, we're going to right click, copy. It's a formula, right? That sum there, and we're going to paste special the value. Okay, and that is going to be a reduction of our equity, so that's a credit. All right, and so now we have a balance entry. Okay, so all of my debits and credits added up equal to 0. So good. So basically we are done and ready to go over to the import sheet, but with one small little task left. We have to spread these figures across. For January, we want to do an amount for each month. We're not going to load an annual amount in. We're going to load a monthly amount in. And let me just tell you that many people in the Sun Plus world divide by 12. This is really a fairly foolish thing to do. I'm not calling you foolish, because it says I shouldn't do that in the Bible, but it's definitely foolish behavior, because we know good and well the revenue is going to come in and at different periods. A school gets a lot of revenue for the 8 months or 9 months they're in business, and then it's got to coast for 2 months without it, and without any revenue. and at least in the U.S., the offerings about 30, as far as world U.S. and all nonprofits, between 30 and 40% of all the donation income comes in the last month. And so we need to plan out exactly what these are going, how we should break these apart. Now, at first that sounds like just way too much work, but it's actually very simple. What I've done is I've prepared a little thing to show you here, and let's go over to it. It'll just take me a second to get us there. I've prepared this little Q&A sheet for us to work with. This is an Excel sheet, but it's empowered with Q&A. So let's just look at overall what we have here. We have for each month of last year, I have broken down my types of revenue and expenses into major categories. I have my tithe and offering and donation income over here, all my other revenue there, and my personnel expenses here, and my non-personnel expenses there. And you would break it down based on your particular business or the type of major categories you have. And then I've had Q&A calculate what was my behavior, what was my total revenue for this month, what was my expense for this month, and so forth. All right, and so let's look at the query just real quick. And here's a query, and so it is a ledger, a ledger, and I'm looking at accounts 61 and 63 and picking up the accounting period from over here in A4. And that's all there is to it. And so the only difference between this one and that one is I've used different accounts. Here I'm doing all the 60s, all the 62, and all the 64 to the 79s. And on this one, personnel expenses, I'm just picking up the 81s. And on this one, I picked up all of everything else besides 81 and besides depreciation. So for sure, depreciation is going to be divided by 12. So I didn't want the even depreciation to throw off my calculation. So my expenses are my revenue. In my example I'm looking at right here is my tithe and offering and donation income are coming in according to this formula, okay, which is very unrealistic. My sample data, the people making up my sample data I love, like my own family, except for they just are taking the same sample amounts of donations. Well, no place in the world that I know of does it come in evenly during the year. U.S. comes in the end of the year driven by taxes and dividend checks and bonuses, and other places it has to do with harvest. Okay, whenever the bananas come ripe, we get a lot more in those months, and so forth. Okay, but what we're going to do is then apply these percentages here to that category of revenue, and apply these percentages to this category of revenue, and these percentages to my personnel expenses, and these percentages to my non-personnel expenses and non-depreciation percentages. And the point is exaggerated here, but still well worth seeing in this particular organization that I'm using right here to make this display. Almost all of their non-personnel expenses happen in the first month. I have no idea what's going on there, but it sort of shows you the point. And so you don't have to analyze every expense and allocate every expense based on history. You can work with general categories of expenses and probably come up with just as good an answer. So we'll take these percentages and use them to spread these figures all the way across. Okay, now there's one last little thing we need to make sure of, is that when we spread these all the way across, we need to make sure that our numbers here are rounded, okay, that they're not a formula. Remember, they got to be a solid number, and that they add up, that when you add up any month, that month has got to total. Okay, so the total for the year totals to 0. But when you start doing percentages and rounding, you can't be off 1 penny as far as rounding error. So you've got to plug that penny to make sure that it rounds out so that each month totals 0, without any stray little 9/100ths of a cent or anything like that, or 9/1000ths of a cent. It has got to be a 0 for that month. And so when you allocate it across, you need to do rounding and be careful. And that would be true whether you divide it by 12. So my idea of having you apply percentages is equally troublesome if you're dividing by 12. So don't let that stop you. The actual getting all these months to be rounded to 2 decimal places and totaling 0 in an absolute sense is very important for the import. So I hope this video has got you off on the right foot. Once you get this done, you're ready to do the import as Jan explains in the import video. So you'll want to watch that next. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being such a supporter for SunPlus.